We are. Painting in some ways is just, painting a picture is like picking a fight, you know?
But I think it is like picking a fight, but it's, for me, it's picking a good fight.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And a true fight.
I was trained as an evolutionary biologist and spent a lot of time before I became a painter thinking about human relationships with nature. And so being a landscape painter is actually pretty problematic for me in a lot of ways. Like it's, especially because, yeah, my paintings do tend to not have buildings. I mean, occasionally they will have a building in, but I'm much more concerned with the light and just the experience of responding and being in relationship with something that's not just me, and that's not actually human-made necessarily. Although every landscape in here has traces of human influence on it, whether there's a building or trail or anything in it, because we're affecting the climate, we're affecting the species that are growing there. You know, the fields are mown. But I worry sometimes that there can be sort of an erasure of, you know, that my work is just one particular view of the landscape. But then again, I remember that it's not my responsibility to sort of solve the human nature relationship in my body of work. And I feel like being outside and being present with something that is much, much larger than me and my ideas of it, which is why I also love, I almost will never paint from a photograph anymore or use photographic references, because I want to be in relationship with what's happening. And it's so much more enjoyable. It's so much larger.
It's a conversation.
It's a conversation.
That's what I've described it as a conversation.
Yeah.
That's something that I really admire about this set of 3 paintings that Frank has done of his studio view looking, is it the Green River?
Yeah, the Green River out there.
And I have known Frank for, gosh, what, 20 years, and he has this intimate knowledge of this view. It's his backyard, but I find these very moving because I know that he has developed a love for this particular perspective, point of view.
I've painted this view, it has to, a couple hundred times. And this series I just started in November, you know, with the COVID thing. I decided that I really had to get disciplined with myself, or I was just gonna wake up late and hang around and do nothing. So I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would be in the studio no later than 6, usually by 5:30, and it was dark out. And I started the series, I started every painting in the dark. And I'd have, you know, I know the composition. I could do the composition at home before I even went in there if I wanted to. And then as the day unfolded, I'd be painting and be actively painting. So it was a fun series, and I actually sold most of them. These are the 3 that are left.
There's something very liberating to me about this, and I go back to the same spots a lot, but it's liberating in the sense of being free from our fixed ideas about things. Like you think a place, right, and maybe a particular image of that place, or you think an apple and you think like, oh, it's red. But look, you know, it's
they're all different.
It's so different.
They're all different. The hills are different. You know, it's the same view, but I've changed the hills. The lights are different depending on what it is. And I don't know. I mean, I do that with all my paintings. It's like I'll take a painting, like that one over there in particular. I'll take a painting and I'll get it to like 75% on site, or maybe sometimes like 150% on site, and then I'll take it back to the studio. And I'll have all my colors still on my palette that I chose out there in nature. And I'll work the painting. I'll work the painting in the studio, and I won't be confined to what I'm actually looking at. Because I don't know, when I'm out there, if that branch does that, I'm gonna make it do that. But in the studio, it'll be like, no, it'll be better over here. Like you said, not being confined to what you're actually looking at.
The sense of these brush marks compared to these brush marks, compared to these are much more evocative of a form. And if I were to zoom in, we were talking about abstract being real, real being abstract. Each one of those marks that you put so deliberately in almost all of your paintings, they each have they're each cylinders in a way. Because as the brush mark gets towards the edge, that Payne's gray is coming through in a very subtle way, and it's almost making like a form.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And obviously, I don't know whether or not you do that on purpose, but for me, that is just, that's an incredible sense of space, form, you know, with an economy of mark making that I think is very hard to do.
You know,
and you do
one of the most enduring visual encounters I can have with, in particular, a landscape is being able to move through the piece and never return. And there's kind of an escape hatch that exists. Frank's painting relationships move me through the space. I play hopscotch through and go around the bend. And it's the same emphasis in this piece I did of the power line cut. Ultimately, you wade through this quagmire of shadow mass and the valley of death, and then move over that hillside across that power line cut. Or it's in Ray's painting. This is a piece that has particularly appealed to me, that flash of light above the ridge. You know, that for me is the moment in the painting. You know, the operatic soprano, or in Chris's piece, you know, going around the lit contours of those clouds.
There's just, you know, an infinite amount of information in here that can be extracted, and that you do what you do so well is you very strategically modulate the thickness of that contour of the cloud, or the clouds. That one color that you've picked out, you know, this color but brighter, and in unison with this blue, you have like this. It's just so perfect as far as, like I said, the humidity, that atmosphere. Dave, what you just said about being able to like fly into a space and navigate through the space. That's what I really, you know, this whole thing you do, I guess it's foreground, middle ground, background. The middle ground background specifically for me, or I think, you know, that atmospheric dissolve that takes place, I really like.
That's what I love about your work. The skies. The sky is not a backdrop. You know, that sky is a bowl, and it's just coming right up over my head.
I think this is one of my most resonating pieces for me, and there's something about the quality of that lapis ultramarine blue that, though it's a dark form, I go through it. Yeah. You know, I mean, I go through his paintings in a very different way. It's interesting that his name is Gloman, because his painting, you know, that's an outstanding characteristic in his work, is that there's a containment of glow.
Yeah, there's always a containment.
I always found his work, one of the reasons I really wanted to include him is I've always admired his work, but there's just a poetry to the marks that he makes, and the economy of the marks. They're very, very economical, but fluid, you know, and intuitive, but really economical.
And it's so hard to do.
It's really
egg
hard.
temper.
It's
That's what
really
I wanted to
hard
ask
to
you.
do.
With egg temper you use.
And with egg temper.
I like the way I'm experiencing almost a greater sense of sky in this shape that's ricocheting off of this moment here. I think that's a really beautiful, it brings the sky, those two relationships bring the sky in to the foreground.
There was a similar thing with these that I experienced that I love when I do my nocturnes, is I'll make the whole painting without any lights. It'll be like it's all shadow, and then I'll turn on the lights. Okay. And it's just like the best part of the whole, it's the most fun part of the whole thing, is to like, okay, it's all shadow, now the sun's out. And that's, I really get a kick out of it. It's my favorite part of painting.
Well, ultimately, you know, I'm trying to be in a place of where my work is ultimately a source of entertainment, where I'm engaged by play, so that I can, throughout the rule book, my own rule book, which is the most odious of all, of, you know, how to make a painting, and just get into that place where I have faith. I have faith in my own experience of form, you know, which is a wrestling match, because those voices invariably creep in, you know. Like, I don't know if, of course, I'm a blustery fool, but sometimes when the first hour or two in a painting, I'm angry. You know, like suddenly there's like a period of aggression, and all the voices and conversations I've had with people, resentments, and I have to wade through that, you know, and you know, and to get to the other side, you know. I don't know if you all experience that, because we're complex. You know, it's not just.
Is it your relationship with what you're looking at that helps you? Does your relationship with what you're looking at in some way help you wade through that?
I think so, because I think just the motif, it's not a random choice. It often, I think for all of us, I think the place where we just choose to set up, whether it's the quality of the cloud cover over that particular copse of trees or rock outcroppings with the cracks, it's a reflection of perhaps some dilemma that also exists within ourselves, and we're seeing it in nature. Where it's like, yes, you know, that's
funny you mentioned you know, like that, working through all of that and the anger involved when you're first starting and working is like, whenever anyone says, "Oh, you paint landscapes," what a pleasant way to spend the day. It's like,
look at my parasol, my little sherry glass.
Yes,
sometimes it's a pleasant day.
I so relate to this. The other day I was going out to paint, and I realized that I eat chocolate before I go out to paint. And all of a sudden I was like, what is this? I have to eat chocolate before I go out to paint. And I realized it's actually because there's quite a lot of, it's difficult. It's really difficult. It's like I have to do something to get myself out the door, because you go, you have all your stuff, you don't know if it's going to work, you're facing, you know,
so
the
how does
blank.
chocolate get you out the door?
Oh, I don't know, it's magic. But it works. And then sometimes I make deals with myself, like I'm just going to go to this spot and whatever's there.
Do you bury a little cash out in the landscape that you don't have at home?
No, but I could promise myself more chocolate when I got home. That might help as well. But usually once I'm there and I start, there's some kind of relief of that. You know, it's like getting over that getting through those voices, getting through the, like, it's not going to work, you know, the weather, I don't know about that storm, the wind is pretty high today,
you know,
I forgot that brush, you know, like, and then once I'm engaged in the relationship and something takes over, like the painting starts to take over, that's such a relief.
Yeah, there's a wonderful quote of a letter by Cézanne to a dealer, this guy Gachet, and Cézanne, he simulates this, you know, my motif is, and my painting when it's unified is like this, you know, if I think too much, you know, and pass too high, all's lost. If I'm too overexcited, and you know, but it's this blending of excitement and not caring. And that's, you know, and I feel like that's what's often, it's such a match of caring and not caring at the same